Good morning, welcome everybody. My name is Klaus Engelmann from the Chamber of Agriculture and Forestry in Styria in Austria, and Marleen Gysen from Belgium. We are both the thematic leaders for the topic energy management. I'm in the Climate Smart Advisors project and Marleen in the Climate Farm Demo project, and we have a joint webinar today. I'm very glad that you're all here. What can you expect in the next, let's say, 1.5 hours? So with a small agenda, I will start with a short general introduction to the topic of energy. Then this is already our second webinar. Maybe I just should say this too. The first webinar we made already an introduction to the tool Farmers with Power. And this will be like the starting point also for today. So there will be a really short recap, maybe, that everybody maybe who was not attending the first webinar can also follow the inputs of this webinar. And then we really start from the top, from the beginning into the field of energy. We start with some definitions, saying on this, like what is energy, what is power. And then today we will talk about energy accounting, energy profiles, demand profiles on farms, and the energy bill. And then at the end we will have a short outlook on our future webinars throughout the two projects. The number of attendance is still increasing. Perfect. But nevertheless, I will start with the thematic introduction. We'll start with some general numbers on energy, energy demand and consumption within the European Union, and some goals. I hope I assume that most of you are familiar with the EU goals in terms of reducing greenhouse gases, increasing renewable energy, and increasing energy efficiency, so decreasing energy consumption. Those are the goals for 2030. I'm not sure if you see my mouse. Yeah, now you should see it. Those are the goals for 2030. And the goal is to have over 42% of renewable energy in our energy mix in the European Union. And we also have a goal to reduce energy consumption by 11% until 2030. So the time frame is quite short. So we still have 5 years for these ambitious goals. And therefore, maybe at the beginning, I have some questions for you. Maybe just write down your answers in the chat. And maybe just a short introduction to really, I wanted to ask you, what is your feeling of energy? And maybe the first question would be how high you think are the shares of oil, gas, coal, nuclear, and renewables on the total energy consumption within the European Union. Not talking just about agriculture, but the total one. Let's maybe start with oil. Just type in some numbers. What is the percentage of oil in our energy mix? So is it like 5%? Is it 50%? Is it 80%? Okay, the first numbers are coming in. We are between 15 and 33%. Okay. What do you think? Let's maybe ask for gas, natural gas. What do you think the numbers for natural gas are, the percentage? Okay. We're like 30 to 35%. And we will skip some. We don't go through everyone, but maybe just the renewables. So all the renewables like wind, hydro, biomass, photovoltaics. What is the percentage of all the renewables within the European Union? Okay, we have for this between 15 and 42%. Okay, interesting. Okay, the real results I will show you later. But first of all, I will go to the second question. Let's assume the renewables is again 100%. So all the renewables. What is the share of for example, hydropower within renewables? So we have again 100%. Is hydropower an important renewable source or not? 10% hydropower, 15%.
1%.
Then 1% in UK. Okay. Then maybe we take PV, because PV is yeah, at least a topic many people talk about. What is the share of PV within renewables? 10% for PV. Okay. 23, 25. Okay. 10%. And last one, what's your guess for biomass, so biogenic energy within the renewables?
No ideas for biomass.
No ideas for biomass. So there's no biomass. 5%, okay. 43%. So we already see a big variation, 10%, okay.
And I think there's definitely a big variation between the member states.
Of course.
Yeah. Yes.
Of course. Okay, perfect. So let's move on to the last question. And what do you think? How is the energy demand divided between electricity, heat, and mobility? So if we have those three sectors, is it like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, or is it, where do we use the most energy? Okay, we have here like 10% electricity, 70% heat, 20% mobility as a guess. Again, it says that she thinks that the most energy we need for mobility. Okay. 20 electricity, 30 heat, 50 mobility. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting, and that's a good starting point. I quite often have presentations here in Austria, and I really like to ask those questions at the beginning. And now I will go to the solutions, maybe starting with the first question. Oh, we still see it in the chat there are coming more answers. So we also have a big variation here. Some think that electricity is really important on the energy demand, and mobility not that much. Others have a high value on mobility. Some have a high on heat. So very really different. So let's move on and see if you're right. So that's the total gross inland energy consumption within the EU 27 from 2022. So the numbers, and we see that we have the most important energy fuel is oil. Is still oil, with 1/3 of our energy demand is covered by oil. We have about 20% of natural gas. So gas is quite often overestimated. And we have a renewable share of in total 18%. So the goal of having 42% by 2030, it's really, really ambitious. At least if we look at those numbers. Agriculture is, for the total energy consumption, not really relevant. We have just 3% of the total energy is consumed in agriculture within the EU. What's really very interesting is the second question, if we just look at the renewable part. And this field, so my second question, I see the most misunderstandings on how this really are. If we look at the numbers, we can see that by far the most important renewable energy sources in the European Union are biofuels, as biomass, like 58% of total renewables. And I checked the numbers. It's really in nearly every EU member state, biomass is the most important renewable source. It's not just Austria, where we have quite a lot of forestry. It's really the most countries, and it is the same accounts for all over the world. Biomass is all over the world the most important in terms of numbers renewable energy source we have currently in our system. Also, we have a quite important amount of wind, hydropower, solar photovoltaic. At the moment is on 7%. Of course, it's increasing, but in total the amount is quite low, still quite low at the moment. So if you look at the newspapers, at least in Austria, they write something about energy. They normally write about photovoltaics, wind, and maybe hydro. So, but the others are not, at least in the media, we don't read about them. What's also quite important is the thing of self-sufficiency. Especially in the renewables, we have nearly 100% self-sufficiency, which is really important in geopolitical phases we are right now, to have a high self-sufficiency on energy. Energy is very important in our daily life in every sector. So it's really good that we have energy in our own production. And that's also, maybe it's not the main topic today, but it's also a chance for agriculture and forestry, because we in agriculture, we have the land, we have the biomass, we have the land where they can build photovoltaics, where they can build wind power. So the production of new renewable energy can be also additional income for farmers in Europe, and can be a second income stream in the future. Yeah, now let's move on to the last question on how energy is divided throughout the sectors. And then, as you can see, energy demand, the sector where we need the most is for heating. So that's the total heating. So that's household heating as well as industrial heating. Nearly half of our energy used goes into the heating sector, and 25% each on electricity and fuels. So we might also get a bit of a, how to say, a feeling where are the big points to tackle. So we talk really a lot, in my opinion, about electricity, and electricity is getting bigger because many processes are getting electrified. However, to really reduce emissions quickly, the heating sector is also a one we should tackle quite fast. Just so the numbers are from 2022, not the 2024 ones. So in 2024 we have already a bigger number of renewables, but in general it's shifting a bit, but not in a big. There are not big differences. So this is for first introduction, a general introduction, and now we really go more on a farm level on this today's webinar. Maybe Marleen, you give a short recap.
I will take over for the next 2 slides. So in the first webinar, which took place in October 24, we presented the tool Farmers with Power, which was developed by Boerenbond Projects some years ago. And I see that some of my colleagues are also attending this webinar. So it's actually a very easy to use tool, as we explained last time. And it's about how to increase or how to achieve an energy efficient farm in 6 steps. And you can see here the different steps in this approach. First of all, know your farm. How much energy is needed? When is this energy needed? And especially, which is becoming more and more important, at what power level? Second step, how to optimize your energy bill. You need to have a clear insight in the different the different costs of the bill. And then the next steps is about energy efficiency. So which energy saving measures can you apply to your farm based on the measurements at your farm? Which renewable energy technologies suit your farm? So really tailor-made, the approach is really tailor-made, what is suitable for your farm. Then the second step is flexibility. Once you produce your own electricity, how can you use it in the most optimal way? And then a second step is about energy cooperation between farmers or between farms, between citizens and farms, industry and farms, etc. So the first 5 steps are really about being or becoming more efficient within the farm. And the next step is being an energy entrepreneur. And this is the last step. We presented this tool, as I said, in the previous webinar, and afterwards Klaus and I, based on your input and your feedback, we decided to follow these steps for the webinar series, at least the first ones. So today we will talk about getting to know your farm, but also a short introduction on how to optimize your energy bill. As I mentioned in the invitation, it's really about basic principles, because I think we said we can talk about this for days. Of course, there's a lot to tell about energy at the farm level, but it's more like capita selecta. We selected some topics and which we think or which we thought were relevant for an introductory webinar to get all on the same page, all get aligned and know the basic principles. And I will Klaus again. You're muted, Klaus.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm quite sure that energy isn't the main topic for most of you attending this meeting today, especially in agriculture and agriculture advisory. It's often like a second or third topic, but it's important for every farm. Of course, the main goal of the farm is to produce, for example, meat or milk or whatsoever. But knowing your energy demand, your energy flows, is also a very important thing to optimize costs. And therefore, and I don't know what's your experience in detail, therefore we have prepared some really introduction on definitions, also to distinguish between energy and power. That's a really important to know. Starting with energy. So what is energy? Energy is stored work. So with energy we can run a motor, we can have electricity, we can do a lot of things. And the units we use for energy, the standard units are either the joule, the international standard unit we see like in nearly every report. The numbers are written as joule, which is an watt second. So 1 watt in a second is a joule. However, in the practical field outside, we, at least in Austria, but I know it also from other countries, we normally talk about kilowatt hours. So energy is always like a performance or the power a lot of people write like kilowatt, then the divided sign, and then the H for hour. So it's not a divider, it's a multiplication. That's very important, because the divider would be in the power section. Just for an introduction. So what's also important is to know how many joules are a kilowatt hour. We have the factor 3600, so 3600 kilojoule equals 1 kilowatt hour. So those are the most common units we have for energy, and I'm sure you're familiar with this growing energy units like kilo, mega, giga, tera. You know it from IT. We also have it here in energy. So kilo means 1,000, mega 1 million, giga 1 billion, and so on and so forth. So let's go there. So what can you do with 1 kilowatt hour? That's maybe the more important question. And so I already told a kilowatt hour is stored energy, stored work. Energy is stored work. And the question is, which work can I do with a kilowatt hour? I can, for example, in a private household, cook with an electric oven a meal for 4 people with 1 kilowatt hour. In an agricultural context, I can like grinding food for 12 minutes or mixing slurry for 4 minutes. I'm kind of operating fans and so on. That's really important to really know what a kilowatt hour can do. We also, but beside of joule and kilowatt hour, we also have like some historical units, especially on some reports we still read like a ton of oil equivalent. Those units are mainly from the fossil era, let's say it like this. Ton of coal equivalent, the barrel, the ton of oil equivalent. Also the calorie, most of us will know it like from food intake, the calorie it also was used for energy, and it also has a quite important definition for energy. Like 1 calorie is defined by heating up water, 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So like 1 kilocalorie would mean I heat up 1 liter of water by 1 degree. And especially if we talk about heat energy, this is very important because most of our heat is runs with water. So we have water pipes, water heat exchangers, where the energy flows in heating systems. Therefore, it's very important how much energy I can put into the water and how much energy the water can take. And we can recalculate the calorie, of course, to kilowatt hours. So 1 megacalorie in this case would mean I can heat up 1000 liters of water by 1 degree Celsius, or it's also the same energy like for 1.163 kilowatt hours. Yeah, where is it important? Also, for example, if I have a photovoltaic system in the first place, it might not seem important to notice. However, if I have a surplus energy from a photovoltaic system and I don't get a good price on the energy grid to insert into the grid, or maybe I'm not allowed to insert it in the grid because I have a power limitation, I can maybe go into power to heat. So I use my surplus PV power and heat up my water boiler for agriculture. So I can, if I have, for example, a 1000-liter boiler where my usable temperature is like 30 degrees. For example, I use the temperature area between 50 and 80 degrees Celsius. I have 30 degrees, 30 times 1.16, so I can store approximately 35 kilowatt hours of my electricity produced from my PV system in this water boiler. And that's a kind of important information if I'm using every bit of my energy system. Yeah, and on the other side to energy, we have the power or the performance. So the power is really the work converted per unit of time. So there we have the divider, it's work per time, and it's the speed where we do the work. So power, it's just the kilowatt or the megawatt or the watt. It's not a megawatt hour, it's just the megawatt. So we can measure power at every time in each period we do some work. We can't measure the energy in every time period. We can measure the energy just on a time frame. So for an hour, for a second, that's a really big difference. Maybe just hopping back to this slide, for example, what can a kilowatt hour, like mixing slurry, I can mix slurry for 4 minutes with 1 kilowatt hour. The question is, what power is it? So I need, I can recalculate it, and that this would mean my slurry mixer has a power of 15 kilowatt, and therefore I would use 1 kilowatt hour in 4 minutes, or 15 kilowatt hours in 1 hour of mixing slurry. In the practical advisory work I'm doing, I'm really often hearing that that energy and power is mixed up. Maybe not in that what the people mean, but how they say it. So I really often hear things like my PV plant produces 10,000 kilowatts. So they just skip the hour. And my PV has, they said my PV has 10 kilowatt power and they produce 10,000 kilowatt energy. So we really should distinguish between those and also use the right terminology. A second thing I want to discuss with you in the first introduction is the differences between value or lower calorific value and gross calorific value, mainly important for in the heating system, especially if we talk about energy. I hope my translations into English are right. I was not 100% sure. I looked it up in the internet, but I'm not 100% sure. In German, at least, we say heating value for the lower calorific value. I think it should, at least you should know what I mean. What are those two? The heating value is the energy in a fuel. For example, I have oil. And if I'm burning this fuel or this oil to 100%, so without any losses, the 100% of energy which is in this oil on a 100% combustion would be my heating value. If the water which is in the oil evaporates through the chimney. So I don't use the water during combustion, which is going out of the chimney. So like all, if we talk, especially in the heat sector, all energy values, nearly all energy values used are on basis of this heating value. So if we talk about 10 kilowatt hours heating energy from oil, we normally talk about this value. Also, if we talk about efficiencies of boilers, of combustion systems, we talk about the heating value. And on the other side, we have the gross calorific value. That would be like the physical, if we go into physics and we have like 100% of the energy in a fuel, we could, in theory, getting out, it would be the gross calorific value. Because it's not just using the whole energy within the fuel during a combustion, but it also uses the energy which evaporates through the chimney. In case it won't evaporate, it also uses the water, and we condensate the water. So we bring down the chimney temperatures, condensate the steam, and in this case, also energy is released. So that would be really the most we can get out of a fuel. So the gross calorific value is always higher than the heating value. I already told you that normally we're using the heating value for prices for energy amounts. Normally, I've heard like two fuels, wood chips for a price of 33 euros per megawatt hour, natural gas like 30 hours per megawatt hour, 30 euros per megawatt hour. Which one is cheaper? You might think that's a quite silly question. However, natural gas energy not stated in heating value, but in gross calorific value. So if you're on an advisory on a farm which currently uses natural gas and in their heating system, and they're thinking about switching the heating systems to something different, you have to recalculate it because gas is on gross calorific value and other fuels are on heating value. So on the gas sector, we have there's a factor of 13%. So in this case, the gas would be more expensive on a heating value factor than the wood chips. So that's also an important thing, especially if you make advisory work on farms with gas heating systems. Yeah, here we have also some numbers about efficiency, especially talking about heat. What do different heating systems have as an efficiency? We have like wooden pellets with efficiencies between 85 and 103%. Gas boilers between 100 and 111%. And you might think, how is it possible that we have like 111% efficiency? Physics says that we can't go over 100. That's again the thing between heating value and the gross calorific value. So those efficiencies are in terms of the heating value. And if I'm condensing, so if I'm using the condensation heat, which is done by on pellet boilers, which is done on gas or oil boilers, it's possible to get efficiencies over 100%, referring to the heating value. Then I have solar systems with quite high efficiencies also solar thermal systems. Also solar thermal systems have quite high efficiencies per square meter. Also in comparison to PV, per square meter, I get more energy out of a thermal solar system. However, I just get out heat, not electricity. So that's a big difference. But if my farm is maybe limited on areas where they can install a solar system, and the main goal is to replace fossil heat, they may be better off with a thermal system and not with a PV. But that's really to in the advisory work of each farm. Normally the roof areas, we have plenty of roof areas, so PV system is often a quite good solution. And of course, we have also the heat pumps with different efficiencies between like air heat pumps 2.5 to like 3. So a heat pump works in this way that I put in 1 kilowatt hour of electricity, and it uses the energy, for example, in the air or in the ground, and brings the energy up. So I have the factor of 1 to 3 in an air heat pump. So I put in 1 kilowatt hour electricity and get out 3 kilowatt hours of heat. More efficient ground collectors, where I can get out like 4 kilowatt hours of heat. However, at least in Austria, nearly 90% of installed heat pumps are air heat pumps, which you can get out like 3 kilowatt hours in an annual average. Maybe that's also a very important thing on heat pumps. It's always an annual average, but for example, in winter times, the efficiency depends on the temperature of my source. If my source is air and the air is colder during winter, the efficiency drops down. So on cold winter days, I might have an efficiency of 2 or 1.5, which can be a topic for our grid system, the electrical grid system, in general. So, and then I have I think one last slide on this introduction. Here's some, for your orientation, here's some values of different fuels. What is the energy of different fuels? Always as heating value. Like 1 liter of oil is normally like 10 kilowatt hours. That's quite easy. Also, 1 cubic meter of natural gas is like 10 kilowatt hours. 1 kilo of wood pellets is more or less the half, about 5 kilowatt hours. So those are the most important heating values as a comparison. So yeah, that was it for the first introduction. Then I will go to energy accounting. Yeah, if we know what is energy and what is the heating value, in our daily advisory work, we have, and I already showed this slide in the last webinar, we have those 4 areas in the middle where we can go into energy efficiency, we can go into energy generation, energy storage, and energy management, always with the goals to lower the costs, reducing dependencies, increasing the self-sufficiency, and reduce the consumption on the farm level. However, to do, and I have plenty of options on a farm, as you can see on this picture, where I can go into and optimize my energy system. However, to do this, the first step is to know the farm and to know the energy. And that might sound simple, but in our practical work, it isn't. We have some prerequisites for energy advisory work on our farms. We should know the energy demand. We should understand the farm. So which agricultural sector is it? For example, of course, if I have a stable with fans, I can say from an energy perspective, okay, shut down the fans and you have less energy consumption, but that's maybe not so good for the animals in the stable. So I also have to understand the agricultural system and the operational processes in the agriculture. And ideally, I have also some energy profiles on a daily, yearly basis, which you can work on. And Marleen will later on show you some profiles in detail. Yeah, and going directly on a farm, we have different levels to make such an energy accounting. And in Austria, we have quite a lot of small-scale farms, really some part-time farmers which have a normal job on the other side, to bigger farms, and the differences also on the knowledge and energy are huge. And on a lot of farms, we really start with the basics. So let's make a table like this to really, what is the annual electricity demand? Most of the farms at least have somewhere the energy bill. Most farmers know how many euros per month they pay for electricity rather than knowing their consumption. But this number, it's quite easy to get. So knowing the total electricity consumption per year and the cost for this is quite easy. More complicated, it's quite often on heat. If you don't have gas, where you also have the bill like on electricity, it's not so easy. A lot of farmers in our area are using wood, using also their own wood, so they don't really know how many wood they are using, how many energy they are using. It's estimates sometimes we have to do with here in the system, and also the efficiencies of the boilers is quite important to estimate, and to have like costs not just for the fuel but for the whole combustion system is getting also a bit tricky sometimes. And the third part is the fuel part. So also sometimes the farmers have invoices of buying fuel. Yeah, we normally to this first step we get at some point, but it's really the first level to have like this annual data. But the next step would be to getting more into detail, to don't just have data on an annual basis, but to have data like on a daily basis, and really having energy profiles, or at least a curve on a yearly profile. Also, we can always separate the processes and units on the farm. So in our case, those total, at least the total electricity and the total heat in most cases, not just cover the farm, but in most cases cover the private household of the farmer. So you can separate the household and the farming unit. You can separate each stable, but we would need some kind of measurement for this. We would need some kind of sub-meters for this. And what you can also do, and that is shown like in this table below, is to go, and this is what we are doing on farms where we don't have like sub-meters for each and every machinery. We go really with pen and paper, look how many fans do this farm has, how many pumps, cooling tanks, whatsoever. Write it down, the quantity, the power those installation has, and then we try to estimate the usage per year. So we can really at least get a feeling where the energy is flowing, and what are the costs for each installation on the farm. Yeah, farmers can also do it like with in the fuel sector, in making like a fuel diary, writing down really on each working step what is done, how many hectares, how many liters did I need it for this process, and so we can work on also in the fuel sector. So now I have prepared one short video, and I'm not sure if you can start it, Marleen.
No, you can do it yourself now.
Yeah. So okay, then I will share my screen. It's a German video, but it has English subtitles. Just the very first subtitle is wrong. It's a dairy farm, not the sub is waste disposal farm, so it's a dairy farm. And yeah, let's show it. Do you hear the sound as well?
No.
Well, I have to share the sound. Now it should work.
Yes.
Ich bin der Wallner Franz Josef, bewirtschafte in der Weststeiermark da einen Milchviehbetrieb gemeinsam mit meinen Eltern. Landwirtschaft ist mehr als ein Beruf für mich, das ist eine Lebenseinstellung. Die Energieeffizienz bei unserem Betrieb war immer schon ein großes Thema. Bereits meine Eltern haben mit der ersten Photovoltaikanlage angefangen. Seitdem ich dann am Betrieb bin, haben wir es jetzt erweitert. Uns war halt immer sehr wichtig, dass wir einen Großteil vom Energiebedarf unseres Betriebes selber decken können. Wir haben einen recht hohen Automatisierungsgrad am Betrieb. Durch unseren Melkroboter, einen Futteranschieber und einen Mistschieber auch, der was alles elektrisch betrieben wird. Von diesem Bedarf an elektrischer Energie, was wir dort brauchen am Betrieb, können wir 60% durch unsere Anlage abdecken. Und das wissen wir deswegen so genau, weil wir an einem Projekt teilnehmen, zusammen mit der Landwirtschaftskammer und der Energie Steiermark, wo wir die Daten genau erheben und da kann man es auch ganz genau auswerten.
Beim Projekt Stromspeicher in der Landwirtschaft untersucht die Energie Steiermark und die Landwirtschaftskammer und die TU Graz, wie praxistauglich unterschiedliche Speichertechnologien sind. Im Rahmen des Projekts führen wir hier über 2 Jahre Energiemessungen durch und anhand dieser Daten analysieren wir, was der optimale Einsatz der Speichertechnologie hier auf diesem Betrieb ist. Was wir jetzt schon sagen können, ist, hier am Hof von Herrn Wallner ist definitiv auch Zahl, einen Batteriespeicher einzusetzen. Das Verhältnis von Photovoltaikanlage und Batteriespeicher, ob das im optimalen Ausmaß ist, werden wir im Rahmen des Projektes weiter analysieren. Und aus den gewonnenen Erkenntnissen des Projektes werden wir auch Empfehlungen für andere Betriebe daraus ableiten.
Wir haben in Zukunft auch noch vor, weiter in Energieeffizienz zu investieren am Betrieb. Und ich mache das nicht nur deswegen, weil ich sehr technikinteressiert bin, sondern weil es jetzt einfach rechnet.
So, yeah, it was a short example of one of our farmers here in this region. He really makes a lot in the field of energy efficiency, and I think it shows that measuring the energy demand is really important to really optimize the structure in the agriculture. And yeah, I think that was it from my first part. And now I'm handing over to Marleen.
Yes, thank you, Klaus. Okay, we promised you to talk about energy demand profiles. What are energy demand profiles? Simply, it's a graph showing how much energy is being used. It can be on a daily basis, on a yearly basis, hours in the day, etc. Here we show 2 examples, and the left one is a dairy farm which milks twice daily. You can see the 2 peaks, one in the morning and one in the evening. It's the two times that the cows are being milked, and it's not only the milking process but also the milk that goes to the cooling tank, and that needs a lot of energy at the beginning. At the right side, you can see an example of an energy demand profile of a dairy farm, but where they use robots for milking the cows, and it's more like and I don't know if you can see the details, but it's more like a flat graph. You avoid the peaks in the morning and the peaks in the evening, and it gives you a lot of insight, such an energy demand profile, into your energy consumption. Yeah, when is the energy used, as I said, and at what level is this energy used? Another example, this is one of the colleagues of Boerenbond projects. It's from a household. It's what comes out of the digital meter, what is recorded, and you can see not only the consumption but also the injection. So it's a colleague who has solar panels, and during a sunny day he produces more energy than they consume at home. So the green one going to the bottom is the injection in the grid. This was from one day. At Boerenbond Project, we put a lot of effort in gathering or collecting energy demand profiles from different types of farms. And here are some illustrations of these energy demand profiles, and you can see some daily and seasonal variation. And the left on the top is from a dairy farm. As I already explained, it's just from one day. So you see, as I already mentioned, the 2 peaks, one in the morning and one in the evening. On the right side, on the top, it's from a fruit farm. It's on a yearly basis, starting from January till December, and you see fruit is picked or is being picked end August, beginning of September, which requires a lot of energy for the cooling of the fruit when it's going to the cooling cells. And afterwards, the fruit is cold, and then it's only the initial moment that you need a lot of energy, and then cools are getting more and more empty. So actually, when it's going towards spring or summer, there's a low consumption at fruit farms. The left one on the bottom is from a poultry farm. It's from a few hours, and it's actually the main energy example of a pig farm. Pig farms, as you know, can be operated in many different ways. So we see a great variation in demand profiles on pig farms, which is not so easy if you go to a farm. Why do they matter, energy demand profiles? Why do we need them? Yeah, first place, of course, because of cost management. And you can identify in a very good way your peak consumption times. You can shift the activities and can reduce energy bills. So if you see, okay, for example, I do not have to pay much during specific hours of the day, maybe I can try to shift the load to those hours. What do we use it for at the Boerenbond projects? Our advisors is actually really to optimize dimensioning and integration of renewable energy systems like solar and wind. As I said previously, when I was explaining the tools with farmers with power, I said it's really when we always strive to make tailor-made calculations regarding dimensioning of a specific renewable energy system at a specific farm, and then you can really benefit from a detailed energy demand profile. But also about operational efficiency, it can be useful. So you can plan energy-intensive tasks when energy is cheaper or more available. It's a bit like the cost management, but also on energy resilience. You can be prepared for power outages if you have a clear view on what the energy profile is on your specific farm, and then, but that's not on the farmer themselves, it's more on a higher level, grid connection planning, of course, for this helps utility companies. Yeah, I already mentioned these cost efficiency benefits. So you can have either load shifting, which refers to a short-term reduction, can be a short-term reduction in electricity consumption, but then of course followed by an increase in production at a later time when power prices or grid demand is lower. And the figure on this slide is an illustration of this load shifting. For example, what we often saw in dairy farms in Flanders, or it used to be when they didn't have solar power yet, there was a time that electricity was quite cheap during the night. So what did dairy farmers do? They all heated their sanitary warm water. They heated it by electricity. It was heated by electricity, and they did it during the night. Of course, now, so they shifted it actually. And now it's a different story when they have solar power, of course, when the peak production is during the day. Another thing that you can do is peak shaving. You can reduce peak demand charges. It's also an option, but then again, you need these energy demand profiles to have an idea of the energy demand on your farm, and improve operational planning. About dimensioning renewable energy, knowing the farm's energy demand profile really helps you in appropriately sizing these renewable energy systems, like solar, PV or wind, but also backup generators and battery. And the first example is that of a dairy farm. The cows are milked twice a day, as I explained, in the morning between 6 and 9 a.m., for example, and in the evening between 5 and 8 p.m. And those milking sessions are always followed by the cooling of the milk. But as you can see very clearly on this slide, that the time of consumption and production doesn't match very well in dairy farms on a daily basis. That's why a lot of dairy farmers, and I suppose you all got this question many times, are very interested in batteries. The second example is of a fruit sector. It's not a daily energy demand profile, but a yearly one. And as I already explained, actually, in the previous slide, at the end of August, fruit is preserved in cooling cells. The compressors of these cooling cells consume a lot of electricity in the first months, but yeah, those aren't the months when the production isn't the highest of the PV panels, of course. So again, this also doesn't match on a really yearly base, but it gives us a lot of insights and also ways or insight to support other measures. But not all agricultural sectors have a bad match for solar systems. This is again the example of a poultry farm. They actually have a good profile for solar system because the main consumer is ventilation, as I explained. When the sun is really shining, the temperatures are high, animals need higher ventilation. So the production profile and so when the production rises, the consumption will rise too. So there's a good match. There are some challenges, and Klaus already very well explained. Data collection really is a challenge, in particular for specific processes. In the worst case, you go to a farm and the farmer says, okay, I need to pay that amount of euro, or my bill is that amount of kilowatt hours a year, and that's not so easy, of course. Then it's just accumulation of their energy amount in a year, so you don't have a detailed profile. That's why we often use typical profiles when we have no detailed data. I showed you some typical profiles already, and especially the ones of the dairy farms can be very useful when you go to a dairy farm, because yeah, they all operate more or less in the same way. And so if they don't have detailed information, we use typical profiles to have at least some insight, or at least some base for calculations. This is an overview of different types of meters for the collection of this data, starting with the analog or electromechanical meter, which is a very traditional spinning disk meter that measures the total electricity consumed over time. And so that's what I said. It's really about cumulative energy usage, no time of use data. It's just what a farm consumes in a year. Yeah, the advantage is that's simple and durable. There's no power required for operation. It has a low cost, but of course the disadvantage is there's no remote reading, data logging, and you cannot measure time-based usage or peak demand. And I think the next one is more or less obliged already in most European member states, and here in Flanders, the introduction is still going on, and I think by 2026, but I'm not sure. I think everyone needs to have a digital meter, which makes our life as an energy advisor a lot easier. Why? Because it measures the energy usage, the voltage, power factor, and most of the times also time of use data. So instead of measuring ourselves, we have this data ready. Farmers can ask it to their the power supplier, and we have a good insight. So they're more accurate than the analog meter. They're easier to read and record. May have some basic load profiling. On the other hand, of course, they're a bit more expensive, and it's just a digital meter, not a smart meter yet. So they don't support a lot of features, which leads to the next one, the smart meter. It's a more advanced digital meter with detailed time of use, power quality, sometimes demand peaks, but it enables dynamic pricing and demand response participation. So you can really do something with it. It has a lot of features added to this digital meter. when we want to have insights in specific processes, specific loads, parts of a system, like what a specific pump consumes, cooling units, or whatever. And so it really identifies energy identity, or we can use it to identify energy intensive processes when we think there's a problem maybe, or an issue, or we want to know more about specific processes. And now we have a demand meter. That's the most expensive one, maybe also. It measures peak load over short intervals, but it's used primarily in more industrial settings or really big farms, so it's less relevant for small farms. How I am looking at the time, it's already 10 to after 11, so I will continue. I would like to continue. Yeah, choosing the right meter for a farm. I already mentioned it a bit. For small farms, a basic digital or smart meter may do. Yeah, we just want to have an insight in when they do use energy. For more medium, large farms, smart meters, but also sub-meters for detailed insights are welcome. If farms have renewable energy systems, then it's important to measure, of course, the net export imports. But also the interface with energy management system can be important when you want to do some demand side management on your farm and you want to do some shift loading, peak shifting, and so on. Yeah, future outlook. Of course, we see integration of Internet of Things, more sensors for real-time tracking, but also, which can be interesting again with these renewables, AI-based forecasting for demand prediction. And so you have you can have production prediction for your renewables, but you can also have demand prediction based on what has been consumed on the farm previously. Yeah, and we see a lot more electrification of farming. More of farm equipment on the farm. That is already going on for a while. This is the project Agriflex from Austria, and I asked Klaus to explain just in a short.
Really short. That was too long in my first part.
Oh, no worries.
we have we just starting a new project with our regional energy supplier. Project Agriflex, and there we are looking at farms at the possibility of using dynamic electricity tariffs. So really using cheap phases on a 15-minute basis. So the tariffs have different tariffs each 15 minutes, and we are really try to optimize by using cheap prices for storing electricity in the batteries, for loading electric cars, and also for optimizing the structure on the farm. And we're also trying to establish renewable energy communities that the farmers can sell the surplus electricity to neighbors, or they can get electricity from their neighbors. So it's quite an interesting project we're starting at the moment.
And we like to hear more of it when it's on full speed, of course. As I already announced, just some small topics on the energy bill, because it's also a complex topic. Let me start with the price components of a typical energy bill. So you have the commodity costs, or actually the energy consumption costs. You have the grids and the network costs, transmission costs, distribution costs, and then a lot of other costs, like you have taxes, but also public service obligations. What we have in Flanders are the green certificate costs. So it's cost for renewable energy that needs to be paid, but also metering and service fees, and then of course the VAT. But there can also be a lot of other costs, but those are the four main ones. And I'll continue with an example from Flanders. It's an electricity bill for SMEs, so small medium enterprises, from February 2025. So you have the consumption costs, you have the distribution costs, and you have the taxes. the consumption costs are more or less, no, more or less, they are affected by the, yeah, of course, in the first place by the consumption, but also by the type of contract you have. You can have a fixed one, a variable, and now also these dynamic contracts, and Klaus is already also mentioning them. Distribution costs in Flanders, and I think that goes for most countries, are affected, of course, by consumption, but now quite recently also by peak capacity in Flanders. It's affected by whether you have a low or medium voltage connection, but also the region you live in. We have different grids operators, and they all charge different things. And taxes, again, are also affected by consumption, lower or medium voltage connection, but there can be a lot of other influences, of course. The bottom shows the distribution of these costs. And as I said, it's one from February 2025 for small and medium enterprises. I cannot emphasize this enough because there's a lot of variation in this. So it's about half of the bill goes to the consumption costs, and then the other to the distribution. Okay, how can you optimize your energy bill? Yeah, of course, by being more energy efficient and by producing renewable energy, but that's not where we are talking about this today. It's really about the bill itself. The other topics are for future webinars, of course. First of all, try to understand your tariff structure. What is your current tariff? Is it a flat rate? Is it time of use? Is it demand-based? Is it a variable? Whatever. So you need to know also as an advisor what kind of contract the farmer has. And then you can explore available options. In some countries, there exists something like an agricultural tariff, or you can have an off-peak tariff. Is it possible for your farm? And of course, negotiate with suppliers. Like we discussed it yesterday in Austria, in Flanders, we all have countries where energy supply is deregulated, and I think that goes for most countries. So farmers have the option to choose a cheaper provider, and then it's time to negotiate, of course. Another option is to explore whether it's possible to join an energy community with all the benefits that goes with that. Yeah, and then we would advise you advise you as an advisor to advise the farmers to monitor and analyze the bills on a regular basis. They often contain useful signals, especially look at peak demand charges. If all engines are working at the same time, compressors, whatever, there's a lot of peak demand, and sometimes you get billed for that. You also have to identify power factor penalties, and I will explain a bit later, or I try to explain this reactive power or reactive energy, and of course check for billing errors if there are also anomalies. What is reactive energy and why does it matter? I try to explain, as I said, electricity consists actually of two parts working together. So you have first place the active or the real energy, which does the useful work, like powering a motor, the lighting, the heating. But you also have this reactive energy. It doesn't do useful work, but it's energy that flows back and forth to support the operation of certain equipment like motors and pumps, actually to stay running. And I added a picture or a drawing of pushing a swing. Imagine you're pushing a child on a swing. The active energy is really the forward push that makes the swing move higher. Reactive energy is the back and forth rocking motion that doesn't move the swing forward, but as you know, it's necessary to keep the swing moving. So you're not always adding energy to make progress, but you're maintaining the motion. You need this reactive part back and forth. And that's also what's happening when you use equipment like motors and pumps and so at a farm. And that's why farmers should care. As some utility companies, they charge penalties if the power factor or the cosinus fee is too low, and the ratio of active to total power So to avoid extra charges, you really need to have a look at this reactive energy, or especially at the power factor. But it, for example, by installing capacitor banks, they correct this power factor. Modern energy efficient motors, and of course, have a look at it with the smart meters that show the power factor. So it's not on every bill. It's more for the bit more bigger farms, but it's important to have a look at it and to react to this reactive energy. I will conclude with the last hot topic. We had, I think, in many areas in Europe, we had very sunny but also windy days, and we also had some holidays over the last weeks. So at least in Belgium, there were a lot of news articles about negative energy prices. What are negative energy prices? As I said, they typically occur in wholesale electricity markets during periods of high renewable generation, especially wind or solar. When there's a low demand, like in weekends, nights, public holidays, for example, the Easter Monday was a very sunny day. The 1st of May was a very sunny, warm day. So there was a surplus of energy, but also it can also occur when we have a grid congestion or surplus energy conditions. Yeah, those were these surplus energy conditions. And in these moments, consumers, if they have the proper tariff, can be paid to take electricity off the grid. It all has to do with balancing the system. So can farmers benefit from negative energy prices? They can, if they choose for one of these options or one of the options. So they can have, or they can, ask for a contract with a dynamic pricing tariff, and when electricity prices vary hour by hour or in 15-minute intervals, based on actual wholesale prices. Bill is then calculated using this price curve. If the price drops below zero, they can be paid to consume. Of course, it's not suitable for each farm. I already showed you a few times the energy demand profile of a dairy farm that milks twice a day, for example. They cannot really benefit from this dynamic tariff in a very general way, of course, if they have a low consumption during the day when prices are low, for example. There's also the option of participating in an aggregator system or to participate in a virtual power plant where farmers or the consumers are grouped, and so then as a group they can act, of course. As I said, it's just a few topics we have explored. As you know, there will be many more webinars to come over the next years. What we already had a survey in October, and what came out was that you want to know more about advice tools, more practical on-farm tips, more on biogas, greenhouses, agrivoltaics, and energy communities. We can already announce that we will follow for the next webinars the steps of these tool farmers with power. So the next one, as we follow these 6 steps, is on energy efficiency, and we promise that we will give you a lot of practical on-farm tips, because then we have more time also to talk about the different types of farms and what kind of measures can be taken to reduce the energy demands. And of course, we'll try to provide you with a lot of practical tips. Biogas, there's another thematic area on biogas, and they also have webinars, of course, so we will not do this or only partially within our webinars. What is definitely on top of our mind also is agrivoltaics and energy communities. Both of the thematic leads have some experience with that. Any input of you is also welcome, of course. Do you have more suggestions for future topics or for future webinars, we opened a new Mentimeter survey, so you can go to menti.com using code 26564341, or you can simply scan the QR code. I will let the Menti open for the next days, so please make use of this opportunity to give feedback, for future topics. And then we would like to thank you for attending this webinar. If you have any question, please feel free, open your mic, type it in the chat. We're still here for a few minutes, so feel free to ask. Thank you for the compliment. It was not the most easy, probably, because we introduced a lot of basic principles, somewhat technical principles, but we promise in the next webinars it will be more practical and more hands-on form tips.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It was very interesting. I would like to ask you if we will send us the slides.
Yes,
I found some parts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. The responsible person for the thematic area knowledge exchange webinars and so on has asked us, or she has asked us, to upload everything, so we will share the presentation but also the recording of this session.
Thank you very much.
Klaus, that's one for you.
Ah, yeah, I just see it. It's about the greenhouse gas factor for wood. The slide, at least I used, are the official Austrian greenhouse gas factors from the Austrian environmental agency, or the environmental from the federal state environmental agency, and there we have a greenhouse factor of 0 for wood. Although we have, at least if you count harvesting and so on, a little greenhouse factor, but on the direct emissions, the factor is counted with 0.
Okay, thank you. We put the question on the chat. Well, because I was a little bit surprised, because in France we don't use 0. It's very low, but it's not 0.
Yeah. There are different calculations. Also in Austria, we have
probably
like just the direct emissions, we have 0, and also with indirect emissions, we have 0 point something, you know.
Okay. Thank you.
So if there are no questions or no comments anymore, I think we can conclude this session, and I will stop the recording.